Hello, Bacha Party. How are you all? This is Dr. Sunil Kanal, your friend, philosopher, mentor, and guide, along with Atal Seva Kendra and Anubhavi Foundation, taking your 10th standard revision lectures. I hope after the timetable which has been released by the Maharashtra board, you all are working very nicely and hard, and you are really going to shine in your exams. We are always there to help you out. As I told you, I am Dr. Sunil Kanal, and let's start with a new chapter for our Science 1 revisions, that is chapter number 8. Which is for 4 marks with option 6, that is metallurgy. A very nice, interesting chapter talking something about metals and non-metals and how the extraction of metals occurs, the basic things which we should know about the metals and how they are purified and they are extracted. So, dear friends, Earth was born about 4.5 billion years ago, and it has formed because of various processes which have taken place, and there have been various chemical and physical changes in the core of the earth. This has resulted in the formation of various ores, liquid and gases. The substances around us are in the form of some or other elements or their compounds, and we are very much interested to know about the physical and chemical properties of them. These substances can be classified as metals, non-metals and metalloids, and which you must have studied in the modern periodic table also, and we use them every day in our life and day-to-day life. So we have also studied the characteristics of some of them in the last standards also, and in this chapter we are going to get some thing about the metals and non-metals, their properties, especially the reactions of metals. So now let's come back to the reaction of metals. The metals have a different way of combining with oxygen. On combustion with oxygen, or when they combine with air, or they react with air or heat with air, you get different types of compounds. So metals combine with oxygen on heating in air and metal oxides are formed. Example, sodium and potassium are so reactive that they can react with oxygen in the air even at room temperature and form sodium or potassium oxides, and they can easily catch fire. Therefore, to prevent accidents in the laboratory, they are kept in kerosene. Sodium is kept under kerosene or stored in kerosene. Very important. Now, why it is under kerosene only? This is a very important give reason which you should know, children, bacha party. This can be a important board question also for you all. That is, sodium should be stored under kerosene. Two main reasons you have to write. Sodium is highly reactive. It reacts with air or oxygen even at room temperature to form sodium oxide, and it catches fire easily. Second, it even reacts with water to form an alkali, that is sodium hydroxide, and therefore it is kept under kerosene as its density is more than kerosene, so it will sink in kerosene. It does not react with kerosene, and also it will its contact with air and water gets cut off. Okay, now let's talk of magnesium. Okay, magnesium, it when it is burnt in air, it forms magnesium oxide, which reacts with water to form magnesium hydroxide. Now, reactions of metal with water: calcium reacts with water very slowly and less vigorously. The and it is so slow that when the hydrogen gas is released, generally when the metals react with water, they form their hydroxides and hydrogen gas is released. The hydrogen gas which is released during the reaction of calcium with water, which is a very slow reaction and less reactive, therefore the hydrogen gas gets accumulated on the surface of the metal itself in the form of bubbles. This makes that metal hydroxide layer as well as the metal inside so light, and its density becomes so less that it will start floating on water. So calcium, when reacts with water, floats on the surface of water. Give reason. Again, an important question. So calcium reacts with water to form calcium hydroxide with hydrogen gas. The metals aluminium, iron and zinc do not react with cold or hot water. They react only with steam to form their respective oxides, and hydrogen gas is released free. Now, reaction of metals with oxygen, as we have seen, and also with acids. Okay, here it will be acids. So when samples of aluminum, magnesium, iron or zinc are heated with dilute sulfuric or hydrochloric acid, sulfates or chlorides are formed. So this can be, there is some problem in the heading. We can write reaction of metals with acids. Okay, dilute acids, they will react to form the corresponding salts and hydrogen gas is released free. This you can see that the reactivity of magnesium is more than aluminum, is more than zinc, then it is iron, and they react with the acids to form corresponding chlorides, example where HCl, and hydrogen gas is released free. Now reaction of metals with nitric acid. Nitrate salts of metals are formed on reaction of metals with nitric acid, which is HNO3. Various oxides of nitrogen, nitrogen dioxide, nitrites or nitrates are also formed in accordance with the concentration of nitric acid. Example, when copper reacts with concentrated nitric acid, okay, it forms copper nitrate plus nitrogen dioxide gas is released plus water. But same copper, if it reacts with dilute nitric acid, it forms copper nitrate, okay, plus nitrogen oxide or nitric oxide gas and water. See the difference here. Okay, of course the balancing part you will have to take care of. Okay, then comes aqua regia, very important, very important for you. Aqua regia is a highly corrosive and fuming liquid. It is one of the very few reagents which can dissolve the noble metals like gold and platinum. Aqua regia is freshly prepared by mixing concentrated hydrochloric acid and concentrated nitric acid in the ratio 3:1. Remember this. Okay. It should be concentrated sulfuric acid and nitric acid. The next is reactivity series of metals. Now, what are the reactivity series of metals? They will show you which metals are very reactive and which are very less reactive, and they are noble metals. So, if you see the chart here, you will see potassium, sodium, lithium, calcium are at the top of the table, which are very reactive. Then comes the second order metals, which is magnesium, aluminum, zinc, iron, tin and lead, which are less reactive, and least reactive copper, mercury, silver and gold is called as a noble metal. So we have seen that reactivity of all metals is not the same. However, the reagents oxygen, water and acids are not useful to determine the relative reactivities of all the metals, as all the metals do not react with them. The displacement reaction of metals with solution of salts of other metals serves the purpose. If a metal A displaces another metal B from the solution of its salt, it means that metal A is more reactive than metal B. Example, okay, if I take iron with copper sulfate, it can displace copper from its sulfate and from iron sulfate, and copper is released free. So metal A plus salt solution of metal B, salt solution of metal A and its metal B. That is like a checkmate thing. They will remove that metal and they will take their part. Then reaction of metals with non-metals. Noble gases like helium, neon, argon do not take part in any chemical reaction, so they are called as noble gases. But otherwise, metals can react with non-metals to form corresponding salts. Okay. So if we look into the electronic configuration of some metals and non-metals, it can be seen that the driving force between a reaction is to attain the electronic configuration of the nearest noble gas with complete octet. Metals do this by losing electrons, while non-metals gain electrons. So metals are electropositive while non-metals are electronegative, and they try to acquire the electronic configuration of the nearest noble gas, which are chemically inert. Okay, so example, sodium chloride, when it is formed, sodium loses one electron and chlorine gains one electron, and thus sodium cation and chlorine or chloride anion is formed, and they will be attracted towards by the electrostatic forces of attraction, and an ionic bond is formed. In this way, sodium chloride is formed. This is an important thing which you have studied in the earlier standards also. Now let's come back to chemical properties of non-metals. Reaction of non-metals with oxygen. Generally, non-metals continue with oxygen to form oxides. In some cases, neutral oxides are formed. Okay, reaction of non-metals with water. They will react with water to form the corresponding acids. Okay, example Cl2 plus H2O gives me HOCl, that is hypochlorous acid and hydrochloric acid. Reaction of dilute acids with non-metals. Generally, non-metals do not react with dilute acids. Halogens are exception. They can react with the dilute acids to form corresponding. They can displace the earlier part, the negative part, and they can take their part. Okay. Now, reaction of non-metals with hydrogen, they will form the corresponding compounds of hydrogen. Example, S plus H2 gives me H2S, that is hydrogen sulfide. So in this way they can combine. So now coming to ionic compounds. Very important question. What are the characteristics of ionic compound? Is an important question by itself. The compounds formed when two units, that is a cation and anion, come together by electrostatic force of attraction are called ionic compounds, and the bond is called as an ionic bond. The cation and anion being oppositely charged, there is an electrostatic force of attraction because opposite charges attract each other. You know that this force of attraction between cation and anion is called as an ionic bond. Very important. Example, we talked about sodium and chlorine. Okay, so sodium loses an electron. It's a metal. It had an electronic configuration of 281, and chlorine has an electronic configuration of 287. Sodium loses one electron to form a cation, that is sodium ion positively charged. Chlorine gains one electron and forms chloride ion. Okay, this I can perfectly give you an example of as if it is a marriage between sodium and chlorine. Okay, so sodium and chlorine is because sodium is like a giver, means it's like a vadhu which is coming to the var, okay, to the house. So sodium donates an electron because the girl carries all the feelings and good culture from her family to the family of the groom. Okay, the bride always gives the best to the groom's family. Here also sodium is giving one electron, chloride takes that electron, so Mr. and Mrs. sodium chloride is formed. That is electrostatic force of attraction. Okay, so in this way a ionic bond or ionic compound are formed. Okay, they have a regular arrangement of ions in their solids, and these are responsible for the crystalline nature. They are bad conductors of electricity when they are in the solid state, but they are good conductors of electricity in their fused or in the aqueous solution. Okay, this is also very important. They have a high melting and boiling points. So let's come back to the properties of ionic compound. The attractive force between the positive and the negatively charged ions is strong. Therefore, the ionic bonds exist in solid state. They are hard, they are brittle, can be broken into pieces by applying pressure. Then they have a force of intermolecular force of attraction in ionic bond is large. Therefore, they have high melting and boiling points. They are soluble in water. This is because the water molecule orient the particular manner around the ions separated by dissociation process. Okay, as a result of this, a new force of attraction is established between the ions and the water molecules. Okay, which is very important. That is, hydrogen bondings are also formed sometimes. This gives them a displacement of the ions, and they can move freely inside. The ionic compounds cannot conduct electricity when in solid state. In this state, the ions cannot leave their places. However, in a fused, that is in a molten state, or in the aqueous solution, they can conduct electricity because the ions are mobile. Okay. So this is very important thing. You can see the chart also how their melting and boiling point is very high. The next is metallurgy. As the chapter had suggested, we are going to talk about metallurgy now. The science and technology regarding the extraction of metals from their ores and purification of them for the use of human beings is called metallurgy. Now, occurrence of metals, many metals are reactive, so they do not occur in the nature in free state or in the earth's crust, but they are found in the combined state or in the form of their salts such as oxides, carbonates, sulfides, and nitrates, etc. However, the most unreactive metals that are not affected by water or other natural things or acids or bases like silver, gold, platinum are generally occurring in the free state. Therefore, they are called as noble metals. The compounds of the metals that occur in the nature along with their impurities are called minerals. But all minerals are not used for extraction of metals. The minerals from which the metals can be separated or extracted profitably and economically are called as ores. Profitably because I should get profit when we are extracting it for commercial purposes, or it should be economic, means it should not, we should not spend so much and then get little amount of metal only. Ores contain many types of impurities such as soil, sand, rocky substances, etc. So they have to be removed, and those impurities are called as gangue. So metals can be extracted from the ores by means of various methods of separation. The process of extraction of metal in pure state from its ore is a part of metallurgy. Ores are taken out from the mines, and the gangue is usually separated from the ore by itself by various methods. Then the ore are carried out to the place where metals are produced, and they are extracted to the pure form, and then they can be used for various purposes. This is all comes under metallurgy. So now basic principles of metallurgy. We are going to see certain principles. The first is concentration of ore. The process of separating gangue from the ores is called concentration of the ore. In this process, now you have to remove the impurities. So you should know what are the methods used. So here the desired metal is increased. That is, the concentration of the desired metal is increased, or the compound of it. They are used for various methods are used for this. It depends upon the physical properties of the metal present in the gangue and the present in the ore and the gangue also. It also depends upon the reactivity of the metal and also the purification facilities available at that side. Various factors that could be responsible for the environmental pollution are also considered. So some general methods are as follows. The first is Wilfley table method, that is separation based on gravitation. A very important thing with diagram, you should know this question as a short note also. It is a method of separation in which a Wilfley table is made by fixing narrow and thin wooden riffles. Means it's like a filtration छानी छलनी जिसको हम लोग कहते हैं, that like that. On an inclined surface, the table is kept vibrating continuously. Powdered ore, which obtained from the lumps of the ore, is used. And here the powder ore is produced by the ball mill, and it is poured onto the table which is vibrating, and a stream of water is flowing through it. As a result, the lighter gangue particles are carried away or washed along with the flowing water, while the heavier ore particles or the metal particle or the compound of it will settle down, and then they can be separated from the gangue. The next is a hydraulic separation method. The hydraulic separation method is based on the working of a mill. There is a tapering vessel similar to that used in the grinding mill. It opens in a tank-like container that is tapering to the lower side. So the powdered gangue is put from the above part, okay, and water is forced with a jet from the lower inlet. Then it will mix with the powder ore, and the gangue particles, because of the force of the water, the gangue particles will start floating, the lighter particles, and they can be thrown out from the that is the upper outlet, while the concentrated ore gets settled in the lower part, and which can be collected easily. Now this is a very important thing. Along with the diagram, a very very important question, that is magnetic separation method. The method requires an electromagnetic machine. Okay, the main parts of the machine are two types of iron rollers and the conveyor belt attached to it. Okay, the two types of iron rollers are there, and conveyor belt moving around them continuously. One of the rollers is non-magnetic while the other is electromagnetic. Electromagnetic because whenever you pass current through it, it will act like a magnet. The converter belt moves around the roller. The that is non-magnetic. The conveyor belt is generally a leather belt or a brass. The powder ore is poured on the conveyor belt near the non-magnetic roller. The two collector vessels are placed below the magnetic roller. The particles of the non-magnetic part of the ore are not attracted towards the magnetic roller. They will be thrown away first, while the magnetic part will be separated here in the other container. So this is used for which type of ores? That is a magnetic ores like iron, okay, and nickel. The next is a froth flotation process. Again, a very important thing is froth flotation process. This diagram also is very important. The answer also is very, very, very important. Okay, the froth flotation method is based on the two opposite properties, hydrophilic and hydrophobic nature of the particle. Hydrophilic means water loving, hydrophobic means haters of water. The particles of the metal sulfide, generally the sulfides, due to their hydrophobic property, get wetted mainly with oil. Generally we use pine oil, while due to the hydrophilic property, the gangue particles get wetted with water. Now if they get wetted with water, they will settle down along with the water, while the oil will form the froth and the ore, concentrated ore, will get accumulated with the bubbles or the froth, which can be collected outside, and then the oil can be removed easily. By using these properties, certain ores are concentrated by froth flotation method. Froth flotation. Froth means jhag flotation, because the bubbles of the jhag or the froth will collect in the upward direction or in the upper layers. In this method, the finely ground ore is put into a big tank containing ample amount of water. Certain vegetable oil like pine oil or eucalyptus oil is added to the water for the formation of froth. The pressurized air is blown through the water. There is an agitator rotating around its axis in the center of the flotation tank. Now this agitator will have a air supply which is under pressure, which will create inside a lot of bubbles of air, which will help in formation of the froth. The agitator is used to, as per the requirement, bubbles are formed due to the blown air, and this bubbles mix with the water to form a froth, and it will collect in the upward layers or in the upward part, and the foam contains the concentrated ore also, which can be collected separately. The next is leaching. The first step in the extraction of the metal, aluminium, gold and silver from the ore is a method of leaching. In this method, the ore is soaked in a certain solution for a long time. The ore dissolves in that solution due to a certain chemical reaction. The gangue, however, does not react and thereby does not dissolve in that solution, so it can be separated. For example, concentration of bauxite ore, the aluminium ore is the aluminium ore is done by leaching method. Here bauxite is soaked in aqueous sodium hydroxide or sodium carbonate, which dissolves the main ingredient alumina in it. So now coming to extraction of reactive metals, my dear friends, this was the basics of the metal or ore extraction, that is a removal of the impurities. Now coming to the next stage, that is extraction of reactive metals. The metals at the top of the reactive series are very reactive. Their reactivity decreases down the series. For example, potassium, sodium, aluminium are very reactive. Reactive metals have large capacity to form cations by losing the electrons in the outermost shell. So for example, reactive metals react vigorously with dilute acids to give hydrogen gas. Highly reactive metals burn by reacting with oxygen at room temperature, and their extraction has to be done by electrolytic reduction only. So example, at cathode, sodium ion accepts electron to form sodium, and chloride will lose electrons, will undergo oxidation and will form the chlorine. So it's a redox reaction, and in this way you can easily extract the reactive metals. Now come to extraction of aluminium, a very important question again, dear students. Okay, because this is one of the questions, favorite questions of the board too. Aluminium being reactive metal does not occur in nature in free state. Aluminium is the third highly abundant element in the earth's crust after oxygen and silicon. It is extracted from its ore, aluminium oxide NH2O, that is bauxite, Al2O3 dot NH2O. Okay, bauxite contains 30 to 70% of alumina, that is Al2O3, and remaining part is gangue. It is made up of sand, silica, iron oxide, etc. There are two steps in the extraction of aluminium. So the first is, now coming to concentration of bauxite ore. Bauxite is the main ore of aluminium. Silica, ferric oxide and titanium oxide TiO2 are the main impurities present in the bauxite. Separation of these impurities is done by leaching process, either using Bayer's method or the Hall's method. In both these methods, finally the concentrated alumina is obtained by calcination. First is the Bayer's process. In Bayer's process, the ore is first ground in a ball mill, then it is leached by heating it with concentrated solution of sodium hydroxide, that is caustic soda, at 140 to 150 degrees centigrade under pressure for 2 to 8 hours in a digester. It will form sodium aluminate, okay, and water. Aluminum oxide, being amphoteric in nature, reacts with sodium hydroxide or caustic soda to form water soluble sodium aluminate and water. So in this way bauxite is leached by sodium hydroxide solution. The iron oxide in this gangue does not dissolve in aqueous sodium hydroxide, so iron oxide will separate out and thus you can filter it out and you can get sodium aluminate. Okay, and sodium silicate also sometimes is there because it is soluble along with it. The next is aqueous sodium aluminate is obtained by putting the water and cooled to 50 degrees centigrade. So sodium aluminate reacts with water to form sodium hydroxide and aluminium hydroxide. Now coming to the Hall's process, the ore is powdered and then leached by heating with aqueous sodium carbonate. So Al2O3 2H2O reacts with sodium carbonate to form sodium aluminate, which reacts with water and carbon dioxide is passed through it for a long time to form aluminium hydroxide and sodium carbonate. The precipitate alumina, which is aluminium hydroxide, which is obtained in both the Hall's method and the Bayer's process, is then filtered, washed, dried and then calcinated by heating at 1000 degrees centigrade to obtain pure alumina. So we got alumina, still we have not got the aluminium, very important. So now coming to electrolytic reduction of alumina, a very important question again. So in this method, electrolysis of molten mixture of aluminium or alumina, that is melting point 2000 degrees centigrade, is done in a steel tank. So this is your steel tank. The tank has a graphite lining on the inner part. Okay, inner part there is a graphite lining. Okay, this lining does the work of a cathode. A set of graphite rods is dipped in the molten electrolyte, works as an anode. So they will work like an anode and this part will act like a cathode, negative terminal. And we are mixing the pure alumina with cryolite, that is Na3AlF6, and fluorspar, that is calcium fluoride CaF2, which are added to the mixture, because of that which the temperature reduces to, the melting point reduces to 1000 degrees centigrade instead of 2000 degrees centigrade. So we are mixing them because it will reduce the melting point, also it will save time and energy. Therefore these are mixed up, that is with the pure alumina, cryolite and fluorspar. Now aluminium, whenever the electrolysis occurs, at the anode, so aluminium is deposited on the cathode on passing electric current. Molten aluminium, being heavier than the electrolyte, is collected at the bottom of the tank. It is taken out from there from time to time. Oxygen gas is liberated at the anode. So this oxygen gas, which is liberated at the anode, forms carbon dioxide gas when it reacts continuously with those graphite rods. Therefore the anode has to be changed from time to time as they get oxidized during the electrolysis of aluminium or alumina. Now coming to extraction of moderately reactive metals, this is the metals in the middle of the reactive series such as iron, zinc, lead, copper are moderately reactive. Hence they occur in the form of their sulfide salts or the carbonates. It is easier to obtain metals from the oxides rather than sulfides and carbonates. Therefore, the sulfide ores are strongly heated in air to transfer them into oxides. That is called as roasting. So example, zinc sulfide reacts with oxygen to form zinc oxide plus sulfur dioxide. But the carbonate ores need not be heated strongly in the presence of oxygen, but in the absence of oxygen, they can be heated or in the limited supply of air to form the oxides plus carbon dioxide gases released, that is called as calcination. In this way, you can get the metallic oxides of the moderately reactive metals. Now, apart from carbon reactive metals such as sodium, calcium, aluminum are also used in reducing agent or the reducting agent in the reduction of metal oxide to obtain the metal. This is because their metals displace a moderately reactive metal from its compound because they are higher in the series. Sodium, calcium, aluminum are highly reactive metals. For example, when manganese dioxide is ignited with aluminum powder, the following reaction takes place. So, the manganese dioxide will react with aluminum to form aluminum oxide, and manganese reaction means manganese metal will get. The heat evolved in the above reaction is so large that the metal is formed in the molten state. Another similar example is a thermit reaction, very important. Here iron oxide reacts with aluminum to form iron and aluminum oxide. The reaction is so exothermic that the test tube will start glowing because of the heat. Therefore, it is called as a thermit reaction. Now coming to extraction of less reactive metals, the metals at the bottom of the reactive series are called less reactive metals. That is why they are found in free states in the nature. For example, gold, silver, platinum. The reserves of copper in free state are very few. Presently, copper is obtained mainly from copper sulfide. Okay, it reacts with oxygen to form copper oxide and sulfur dioxide. This copper oxide reacts further with copper sulfide to form copper and sulfur dioxide. Then comes refining of metals. So after extraction comes the metal refining. Metals obtained by the various reduction processes described above are not very pure. They contain impurities. The impurities need to be separated to obtain pure metal. In this way, we can get pure metal in the end by the metallurgical processes. Now coming to corrosion of metals. Rusting of iron articles causes large financial loss. Okay, so what is corrosion we are going to see now. You must have seen that a rust is formed on the iron metal after some time. Even our compass, geometry box compass also gets rusted if it is not used for a longer time. Rusting of iron articles cause large financial loss. Thus, corrosion of iron, that is rusting, is a big problem. Iron reacts with moist air and a deposit of reddish substance, that is Fe2O3 H2O, is formed, which is called rust. This formula you should know properly. Carbon dioxide in moist air reacts with the surface of copper vessels. Copper loses its luster and a greenish layer of copper carbonate is formed, which is again a poisonous layer. This is again the patination of copper. This is called as patination of copper. Very important, patination of copper. It reacts with carbon dioxide in the air, in the moist air, to form copper carbonate, a greenish layer. On exposure to air, silver articles become blackish after some time because they react with hydrogen sulfide in the air to form silver sulfide, which is a blackish color layer. By oxidation of aluminium, a thin layer of aluminium oxide is formed on it. So various metals, so we have to prevent corrosion because it will destroy the metallic properties and it will be harmful for and dangerous also for the buildings, monuments, etc. So we can prevent corrosion. Various methods are used to protect metal from corrosion. Special attention is paid to almost all the methods in which iron does not rust. So various methods are there to prevent the rusting of iron. Corrosion of metals can be stopped by keeping metals isolated from a direct contact with air. The prevention of corrosion can be achieved by various methods. Example, to fix a layer of some substance on the metal surface so that its contact with moisture and oxygen is cut off, we can paint them, or we can use certain applying grease, varnishes, etc. In this way, corrosion can be prevented. Then comes galvanizing. In this method, a thin layer of zinc is applied to prevent corrosion of the iron or steel. For example, shining iron nails, pins, etc. In the method, corrosion of zinc occurs first because zinc is more electropositive than iron, so it prevents the actually corrosion of iron articles. So the iron starts rusting only when the zinc layer gets washed away after few rainy seasons, or iron gets exposed because of the rusting of the zinc first. The next is tinning. In Marathi it is called kalai. You must have heard in various towns, small towns, kalai wala aata hai, when he helps to remove the rusted part or the oxide part of the metal. In this method, a layer of molten tin is deposited on metals. We call this as kalai. A greenish layer forms on the surface of copper or brass vessel. This greenish layer is poisonous. If buttermilk or curry is stored, it gets spoiled. So tinning is done to prevent such damages. The next is anodizing technique or anodization. Again, a very important method to prevent corrosion. In this method, metals like copper, aluminium are coated with a thin and strong layer of the oxides by method of electrolysis. By this, the copper or aluminium article is used as an anode. As this oxide layer is strong and uniform all over the surface, it is useful to prevent the corrosion of the metal. For example, when aluminium is anodized, a thin layer of aluminium oxide is formed. It obstructs the contact of aluminium with oxygen and water and prevents further oxidation. This protection can be further increased by making the oxide layer thicker during the anodization technique. Then comes electroplating and alloying. In this method, a less reactive metal is coated on the more reactive metal by electrolysis. Silver plated spoons, gold plated ornaments, etc. are the examples of electroplating. Majority of the metallic substances used presently are in the form of alloys. Yes, the main intention behind it is to decrease the intensity of corrosion of metals. The homogeneous mixture formed by mixing metal with other metal or non-metals in a right or a certain proportion is called as alloys. For example, bronze is an alloy formed from 90% copper and 10% tin. Bronze statues do not get affected by sun and rain. Stainless steel does not get stains with air or water, and also does not rust. If an alloy made up of 74% iron, that is the stainless steel, 18% chromium and 8% carbon, so that is our stainless steel. So now coming to what are the differences between metals and non-metals. Metals generally form basic or amphoteric oxide. Non-metals form acidic or neutral oxide. This is based on chemical properties only, because physical properties have been deleted from your portion. Metals such as sodium, potassium, copper, aluminium, iron displace hydrogen from water or steam. Non-metals do not react with water. So this is an important question. We have already completed the chapter, dear friends. We are doing the questions now. The first question was metals and non-metals ka difference based on chemical properties. 4 points you should know. Metal form basic or amphoteric oxide, while non-metals form acidic or neutral oxides. Metals such as sodium, potassium, copper, aluminium, etc. displace hydrogen from water or steam when they react with water. Non-metals do not react with water. Metals which are highly reactive and displace hydrogen from dilute acids, while non-metals generally do not displace hydrogen from dilute acids. Metals have strong tendency to lose electrons and form electropositive ions, and they behave as reductants, while non-metals have strong tendency to gain electron. They are electronegative and they are very good oxidants. Then let's see here, the electronic configuration of metal A is 281 and that of metal B is 282. Which of the two metals is more reactive? If you see that, now metal A can be sodium because its electronic configuration is 281, metal B is magnesium. Metal A is more reactive than metal B as it has to lose only one electron from the outermost shell to complete its octet state, while metal B has to lose two electrons to achieve a octet state, that is a stable electronic configuration. Both will react with dilute hydrochloric acid to form the corresponding chlorides with release of hydrogen gas. You can see the reactions yourself. So dear students, this completes the chapter along with the summary and a quick revision along with two questions, important questions for you all. I hope you have understood this chapter. I am always with you to help you and guide you in your science portions. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Keep safe and keep healthy all the time.